The spaceship descended silently through Earth's atmosphere, its sleek metallic surface glinting faintly under the pale morning sun. It was an unfamiliar sight, but one that had been anticipated for months. News of the alien delegation's arrival spread quickly, drawing crowds of curious onlookers to the outskirts of the research facility where they were scheduled to land. The humans watched with a mix of awe and unease as the massive vessel touched down gently on the designated landing pad. A low hum filled the air, and then silence. Among the scientists and military personnel gathered at the facility was Daniel Carter, a man in his mid-30s with dark hair streaked with gray and thoughtful brown eyes. He wasn't like the others, who buzzed with excitement or fear about meeting extraterrestrial beings. Instead, he stood quietly, hands tucked into the pockets of his lab coat, observing everything around him. Daniel had always been more comfortable listening than speaking, preferring to understand before jumping to conclusions. That trait made him uniquely suited for this mission, to study and communicate with the aliens. The hatch of the spaceship opened slowly, revealing a group of figures stepping out onto the platform. They were tall, their bodies covered in shimmering scales that shifted colors depending on how the light hit them. Their large, almond-shaped eyes scanned the crowd, taking in every detail. Most of the aliens moved with confidence, but one figure lingered near the back of the group, almost hesitant to step forward. This was Zarina, the queen of her species. Zarina looked different from the others. Her skin was rougher, darker, and lacked the smooth iridescence that seemed so mesmerizing on her companions. Her eyes were larger, almost too big for her face, and glowed faintly with a soft bluish light. She didn't walk with the same commanding presence as the others. Instead, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that went unnoticed by many. To the humans watching, she appeared strange, even unsettling. Some whispered cruel jokes about her appearance, while others simply turned away, unwilling to look at her for too long. Daniel noticed her immediately. While the rest of the team focused on the more striking members of the delegation, his attention kept drifting back to Zarina. There was something about the way she held herself proud, yet burdened, that intrigued him. When introductions began, Daniel found himself standing close to her, translating greetings and explanations in a calm, steady voice. Zarina listened intently, nodding occasionally. Though her expression remained guarded. Over the next few days, the facility became a hub of activity as researchers worked tirelessly to learn more about the aliens' technology, culture, and biology. Despite the constant flurry of movement and noise, Zarina often retreated to quieter corners of the building, avoiding the scrutiny of both humans and her own kind. Daniel noticed this pattern and decided to approach her during one of these moments. He found her sitting alone in a small lounge area, staring out the window at the sprawling desert landscape beyond the facility. "You don't have to stay here if you don't want to," Daniel said softly, startling her slightly. She turned to face him, her glowing eyes narrowing as if trying to gauge his intentions. "I am here because it is my duty," Zarina replied. After a pause, her voice deep and melodic despite the translation device filtering her words. "But duty does not make rejection easier." Her honesty caught Daniel off guard. He hadn't expected her to open up so readily, especially to someone like him, a human who barely understood her world. Still, he nodded, sensing the weight behind her words. "I can imagine," he said carefully, "being judged before anyone really knows you. It must be hard." Zarina tilted her head, studying him with those luminous eyes. "You are different from the others," she observed. "They avoid looking at me, or they stare only to mock. But you seem curious." "That's because I am," Daniel admitted with a small smile. "Curiosity is what brought me here in the first place, and maybe," he hesitated, unsure whether to continue, "maybe we're not so different after all." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zarina allowed herself a flicker of emotion, a faint smile that softened her otherwise stern features. "Perhaps," she murmured, "but curiosity alone will not change the opinions of your people or—" Mine. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel made it a point to spend more time with Serena whenever possible. During formal meetings, he positioned himself near her, offering subtle support when she faced criticism or dismissal from either side. In quieter moments, they talked about their respective worlds, sharing stories and insights that helped bridge the gap between them. Daniel learned about Zarina's struggles as a leader, how her advisors constantly questioned her decisions, blaming her perceived flaws for their planet's downfall. Zarina, in turn, listened as Daniel spoke about his childhood in a small town where fitting in had always felt like an impossible task. Their conversations grew deeper, each interaction stripping away layers of mistrust and misunderstanding. For Zarina, Daniel represented a rare form of acceptance she had never experienced before. For Daniel, Zarina offered a glimpse into a life shaped by resilience and strength, qualities he admired deeply. Though neither of them voiced it aloud, a bond began to form, one that transcended their differences and laid the foundation for something neither could have predicted. Outside the facility, tension simmered. Anti-alien protests grew louder, fueled by fear-mongering media reports that painted the visitors as invaders rather than refugees. Inside, however, Daniel and Zarina continued to defy expectations, proving that connection was possible even in the most unlikely circumstances. What started as a professional obligation for Daniel and a reluctant duty for Zarina was slowly transforming into something far greater, the beginning of a friendship that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. The days at the research facility stretched on, each one bringing new challenges and discoveries. Zarina, despite her growing friendship with Daniel, found herself increasingly isolated. Her advisors, a group of stern-faced aliens with shimmering silver scales, often whispered among themselves when she wasn't looking. They disapproved of her spending so much time with a human, viewing it as a distraction from their mission to secure resources for their people. Even some of the humans, including members of the research team, began to cast suspicious glances in her direction. One afternoon, tensions reached a boiling point. A group of protesters had gathered outside the facility, their voices loud and angry. The sound carried through the walls, disrupting the usual calm of the building. Zarina stood near a large window, watching as the crowd held up signs with harsh messages scrawled across them. "Go back to your planet, and we don't want your kind here." Her glowing eyes flickered with unease, though she tried to hide it. Daniel noticed her standing there and approached cautiously. "You don't have to stay by the window if it's bothering you," he said gently. His voice was calm, but his concern was evident. Zarina didn't turn to face him immediately. When she finally did, her expression was strained. "They do not understand," she said quietly. "They see only what is different, not what we share." Daniel nodded, leaning against the wall beside her. "Fear makes people say and do things they wouldn't normally. It doesn't mean they're right." "But it hurts just the same," Zarina replied, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, she looked away, her gaze dropping to the floor. Then, as if deciding to trust him, she added, "I've spent my entire life being told I'm not good enough. My own people rejected me long before these humans ever saw me. Sometimes, I wonder if it would have been better if I had never become queen." Her words struck a chord with Daniel. He thought about his own struggles, how he had always felt like an outsider in his small hometown, how he had learned to keep parts of himself hidden to avoid judgment. "I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong," he admitted. "But you can't let other people's opinions define who you are. You're stronger than that." Zarina studied him for a moment, her large eyes searching his face. "Why do you care so much?" she asked bluntly. "Why does it matter to you what happens to me?" Daniel hesitated, unsure how to answer. Finally, he said, "Because I see someone who's been dealt a tough hand but keeps going anyway. That takes courage. And because I think we're more alike than you realize." For the first time in days, Zarina smiled, a small, fleeting gesture, but one that carried genuine warmth. "Perhaps you are right," she said softly. "But courage alone cannot change the minds of those who refuse to listen." As the weeks passed, Daniel and Zarina continued to meet whenever they could, finding solace in each other's company. Their conversations ranged from lighthearted topics, like Daniel's attempts to explain human humor, which often left Zarina puzzled, to deeper discussions about their fears and hopes for the future. Slowly, Zarina began to open up in ways she hadn't with anyone else. She told Daniel about her childhood, growing up as the daughter of a prominent leader who had always expected perfection from her. She spoke of the loneliness she felt even within her own family, how her appearance had made her an outcast from a young age. In return, Daniel shared stories of his own struggles. He talked about his father, a strict man who had pushed him to pursue a career in engineering despite Daniel's passion for biology. He described the years he spent trying to prove himself to his peers, only to realize that true fulfillment came from following his heart. Through these exchanges, their bond deepened, becoming something neither of them had anticipated. However, not everyone approved of their growing closeness. Rumors began to circulate among the researchers and staff at the facility. Some accused Daniel of sympathizing too much with the aliens, while others mocked him for associating with someone they considered grotesque. One day, during a lunch break, Daniel overheard two colleagues talking about him. "Did you hear? Carter's practically living with that alien queen now," one of them sneered. "What's wrong with him? Does he think he's one of them?" "He's probably just trying to get attention," the other replied with a shrug. "Either way, it's disgusting." Daniel clenched his fist beneath the table but said nothing. He knew arguing wouldn't change their minds, and besides, he didn't owe them an explanation. Still, the comment stung, reminding him of the judgments he had faced growing up. When he returned home that evening, his sister Laura was waiting for him. She had come to visit, bringing along a casserole she claimed would cheer him up. But as soon as she saw the distant look in his eyes, her cheerful demeanor faded. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting the dish on the counter. "You seem distracted." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's nothing, really. Just work stuff." Laura raised an eyebrow. "Work stuff? Or alien queen stuff?" He blinked, surprised. "How did you—" "I'm not blind, Danny," she interrupted. "People talk. They say you've been spending all your time with that Zarina person. Is it true?" "Yes," Daniel admitted. "But it's not what they think. She's complicated and misunderstood. Most people don't bother to look past her appearance, but there's so much more to her than that." Laura frowned, crossing her arms. "I get that. I really do. But you're playing with fire here. What happens when this blows up in your face? Or worse, when it puts you in danger?" "It won't," Daniel said firmly. "Zarina isn't dangerous. She's just lonely, like me, in a way. We understand each other." His sister shook her head, clearly unconvinced. "Just be careful, okay? I don't want to see you get hurt." Despite Laura's warnings, Daniel refused to distance himself from Zarina. If anything, their bond grew stronger in the face of adversity. Zarina, too, faced mounting pressure from her advisors, who demanded she focus solely on securing resources for their people, rather than wasting time on emotional connections. They reminded her constantly that her role as queen was to serve her species, not to indulge in personal relationships. One evening, after another grueling day of negotiations, Zarina confided in Daniel. "My advisors are losing patience with me," she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "They believe I am weak, that I have allowed myself to become distracted by you. They may try to remove me from power if I do not comply." Daniel frowned, his heart aching for her. "That's not fair. You're doing everything you can to help your people. Why should you have to give up part of yourself to prove your worth?" "Because that is the burden of leadership," Zarina replied bitterly. "To sacrifice oneself for the greater good. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps I am not fit to lead." "No," Daniel said firmly, stepping closer to her. "Don't say that. You're one of the strongest people I know. don't let them make you doubt yourself. Zarina looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with conflicting emotions. Why do you defend me so fiercely? She asked. Why do you believe in me when no one else does? Because I see the real you, Daniel answered, without hesitation. And the real you is incredible. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the weight of unspoken feelings hanging in the air between them. Neither dared to break the silence, afraid of what might happen if they did. But in that moment, something shifted, a spark of hope ignited, promising the possibility of something greater than either of them had imagined. Outside, the protests continued, their shouts echoing into the night. Inside, however, Daniel and Zarina found refuge in each other's presence, their connection offering a fragile yet powerful shield against the storm raging around them. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, they faced it together, determined to defy the odds stacked against them. The days that followed were some of the hardest Zarina and Daniel had ever faced. Rumors about their friendship spread like wildfire, fueled by gossip and fear. At first, it was just whispers in the hallways of the research facility. Snide comments about how Daniel was spending too much time with an alien, how he must be trying to gain favor or attention. But soon, those whispers turned into outright accusations. Some people called him a traitor, while others labeled him foolish for associating with someone they considered unnatural. The tension grew thicker with each passing day, making it harder for both of them to focus on their work. For Zarina, the pressure came not only from humans, but also from her own advisors. They had always been critical of her leadership, but now they used her relationship with Daniel as proof that she was unfit to rule. You are compromising our mission, one of her advisors, a tall alien named Valen, said during a private meeting. His voice was cold, his glowing eyes narrowed in disapproval. Your attachment to this human is distracting you from what truly matters, securing resources for our survival. Zarina clenched her fist beneath the table, her rough skin brushing against the smooth surface. She wanted to argue, to defend herself and Daniel, but she knew her words would fall on deaf ears. Instead, she remained silent, letting Valen continue. His lecture. If you do not distance yourself from him, we will have no choice but to consider replacing you as queen, he warned. Our people cannot afford weakness in leadership. When the meeting ended, Zarina felt drained, as if all the energy had been sucked out of her. She retreated to her quarters, sitting alone in the dimly lit room and staring at the floor. Her mind raced with doubts. Was Valen right? Had she allowed her feelings for Daniel to cloud her judgment? What if stepping down was the only way to ensure her people's survival? Daniel, meanwhile, faced his own challenges. His colleagues avoided him, treating him like an outsider, even though he had worked alongside them for years. During team meetings, he noticed how they excluded him from important discussions, as if his opinions no longer mattered. One researcher, a man named Greg, even confronted him directly. You're jeopardizing everything we've worked for. Greg snapped during a heated argument. Do you really think fraternizing with the enemy is going to help us? They're not the enemy, Daniel shot back, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. They're refugees just like anyone else who's lost their home. And Zarina, she's not what you think she is. She's smart, compassionate, and stronger than any of you give her credit for. Greg rolled his eyes, shaking his head in disgust. Whatever you say, Carter. Just don't come crying to us when this whole thing blows up in your face. The criticism weighed heavily on Daniel, but it wasn't the worst part. The hardest moments came when he overheard strangers talking about Zarina. Some called her ugly, others referred to her as a monster. Each insult felt like a punch to the gut, knowing how deeply those words must hurt her. He wished he could shield her from the cruelty of the world, but he knew he couldn't protect her from everything. Despite the mounting pressure, Daniel refused to give up. He continued to meet with Zarina whenever possible, determined to show her that she wasn't alone. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, They found themselves sitting together in the same quiet lounge where they had first bonded. The room was empty except for the two of them, the hum of the facility's machinery providing a soothing background noise. "I'm sorry," Daniel said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I'm sorry for all the things people are saying about you. None of it is true." Zarima looked at him, her large eyes filled with sadness. "It doesn't matter," she replied softly. "Words can't harm me. Not anymore. I've heard worse." "But it does matter," Daniel insisted. "People shouldn't treat you this way. You deserve better." Zarina smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Perhaps. But wishing for things to be different won't change reality. My advisors are right about one thing. I am failing as a leader. If I step down, maybe someone else can succeed where I have failed." "No," Daniel said firmly, leaning forward to catch her gaze. "Don't talk like that. You're not failing. You're fighting for something bigger than yourself, something most people wouldn't have the courage to do. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard." His words lingered in the air, giving Zarina pause. She had spent so long believing she wasn't good enough, letting others dictate her worth. But hearing Daniel speak with such conviction made her question those beliefs. Maybe she didn't have to carry this burden alone. Maybe there was another way. The turning point came a few days later, when tensions reached a fever pitch. A group of protesters gathered outside the facility, their chants growing louder and angrier. "Send them back," they shouted, holding signs that depicted distorted images of Zarina and other aliens. The hostility was palpable, and security. Teams scrambled to keep the situation under control. Inside, Zarina watched the chaos unfold on a monitor, her expression unreadable. Daniel stood beside her, his jaw tight with frustration. "We can't let this hatred win," he said finally. "There has to be a way to show people the truth." Zarina turned to him, her glowing eyes steady. "What do you suggest?" "A public forum," Daniel replied without hesitation. "A chance for you to speak directly to the humans, to explain who you are, why you're here, and what you're trying to achieve. If people hear your story, maybe they'll start to see you differently." Zarina hesitated, uncertainty flickering across her face. "And if they don't? What if they reject me completely?" "Then at least you'll know you tried," Daniel said gently. "Sometimes all it takes is one person to listen for things to start changing." After much deliberation, Zarina agreed to the plan. With Daniel's help, they organized a public event at the facility, inviting representatives from both human and alien communities to attend. On the day of the forum, the auditorium was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Zarina stood at the podium, her heart pounding as hundreds of eyes fixed on her. For a moment, she felt paralyzed by self-doubt, but then she glanced at Daniel, who gave her an encouraging nod. Drawing strength from his support, she began to speak. "My name is Zarina," she started, her voice steady, despite the nerves coursing through her. "I am the queen of my people, though many of you may wonder why. I am not beautiful like my kind. I am not perfect. But I am here because I believe in unity and finding common ground between our worlds." She went on to share her story, speaking candidly about the challenges she had faced as a leader and as an individual. She talked about the war that had destroyed her planet, the pain of rejection she had endured, and her hopes for a future where humans and aliens could coexist peacefully. By the time she finished, the room was silent, the audience visibly moved by her honesty. When Zarina stepped away from the podium, Daniel took her place, addressing the crowd with equal sincerity. "I know it's scary to trust someone who's different from you," he said, "but trust is how we grow. It's how we learn. Zarina isn't just an alien queen. She's a person, a friend, who has taught me more about compassion and resilience than I ever thought possible." As the forum ended, a small but vocal group of attendees approached Zarina and Daniel, expressing their gratitude and support. Though not everyone was convinced, the event marked a significant step toward breaking down barriers. For the first time in weeks, Zarina allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, change was possible after all. The days following the public forum were a whirlwind of mixed emotions. Zarina and Daniel had hoped the event would spark meaningful change, and in some ways, it did. A small but growing number of humans began to see the aliens and Zarina herself in a new light. Letters of support poured into the facility, written by individuals who had been moved by Zarina's speech. Some even visited in person, eager to learn more about her people and their struggles. Yet for every kind word or gesture, there were twice as many hateful messages, threats, and protests demanding that the aliens leave Earth immediately. Despite the backlash, Zarina felt a renewed sense of purpose. The forum had reminded her why she had become queen in the first place: to fight for her people, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be. Still, the weight of leadership pressed heavily on her shoulders. Her advisors continued to criticize her relationship with Daniel, insisting it was a distraction that could jeopardize their mission. Even among the humans, skepticism lingered. Many doubted whether true understanding between their species was possible. One evening, after another exhausting day of negotiations, Daniel found Zarina sitting alone in the lounge. She stared out the window at the desert horizon, her glowing eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. He approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. "You've been quiet all day," he said gently, taking a seat beside her. "Is everything okay?" Zarina hesitated before answering. "I keep thinking about what you said during the forum, that trust is how we grow. It made me realize something." She paused, turning to face him. "I've spent my entire life waiting for others to accept me. But maybe acceptance isn't something I should wait for. Maybe it's something I need to choose for myself." Daniel nodded slowly, sensing the depth of her words. "That takes courage," he said. "It's not easy to stop looking for validation from others." "It isn't," Zarina admitted. "But I'm tired of feeling like I have to prove my worth to everyone. To my advisors, to my people, to yours." She trailed off, her voice softening. "Except to you. With you, I don't feel like I have to prove anything." Her words hung in the air, carrying a vulnerability Daniel hadn't seen from her before. He reached out, placing a hand lightly on hers. "You don't," he assured her. "Not with me." For a moment, they sat in silence, the connection between them stronger than ever. Then Zarina spoke again, her tone hesitant but resolute. "There's something I've been thinking about," she began. "Something I want to ask you." "What is it?" Daniel asked, his curiosity piqued. Zarina took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Would you consider marrying Emmy?" The question caught Daniel completely off guard. He blinked, stunned, as his mind raced to process what she had just said. "Marry?" he repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Yes," Zarina replied, her glowing eyes locked onto his. "I know it sounds impossible. Our worlds are so different, and there will be consequences, many of them painful. But I believe this could mean something, not just for us, but for everyone. If we can stand together, maybe others will see that. Unity is possible." Daniel didn't respond right away. His thoughts swirled with uncertainty. Marrying Zarina would mean facing even more hostility, not only from humans, but also from her own people. It would mean giving up any semblance of a normal life. Yet as he looked at her, he realized none of that mattered. What mattered was the bond they shared, a bond built on trust, respect, and an unshakable belief in each other. "I'll do it," he said finally, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "If you're sure this is what you want, then yes, I'll marry you." Relief washed over Zarina's face, followed by a radiant smile that lit up the room. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not as a queen, not as an outsider, but as someone worthy of love. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me." News of their engagement spread quickly, igniting a firestorm of reactions. To some, it was a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of love and acceptance. To others, it was an outrage, a betrayal of both human and alien values. Protesters gathered outside the facility once again, their chants louder and angrier than before. Signs reading, "No interspecies marriage," and "Keep humans and aliens separate," dominated the crowd. The media seized on the story, amplifying. The controversy with sensational headlines and heated debates inside the facility. Tensions ran high. Zarina's advisors were furious, accusing her of putting personal desires above her duties as queen. "This marriage will destroy everything we've worked for," Valen snapped during an emergency meeting. "Do you think the humans will respect us now? They'll see us as weak, as desperate." "They already see us that way," Zarina countered, her voice firm, despite the anger in the room. "Based?" The backlash against Daniel and Zarina's engagement was swift and unrelenting. Protesters swarmed the facility, their shouts echoing through the halls even as security teams worked to keep them at bay. Inside, the atmosphere grew tense, with researchers and staff exchanging uneasy glances. Some avoided Zarina altogether, while others whispered behind her back, their disapproval clear in their expressions. The media frenzy only made things worse, with news outlets painting their relationship as unnatural and dangerous. For every supportive message they received, there were dozens more filled with hate. Zarina bore the brunt of the criticism from both sides. Her advisors, already skeptical of her leadership, now openly questioned her sanity. "You are throwing away your position for a human," Valen said during a heated meeting, his voice sharp with disdain. "Do you think this will bring unity? It will do the opposite. Our people will lose faith in you and in us." Zarina stood tall, though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "Faith isn't built on fear or division," she replied evenly. "If we want peace, we must take risks. This marriage is about more than just me and Daniel. It's about showing that love can exist between different worlds." Valen scoffed, shaking his head. "Love? Is that what you call it? Or is it weakness?" "You're blinded by emotions, Zarina. A queen cannot afford such distractions." Daniel, who had been listening quietly from the corner of the room, stepped forward. "It's not weakness," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension. "It's courage. Standing up for what you believe in even when everyone else tells you you're wrong, that takes strength." Valen turned to glare at him, his glowing eyes narrowing. "And what do you know of strength, human? You live in comfort on this planet while ours lies in ruins. Do not lecture us about sacrifice." Before Daniel could respond, Zarina raised a hand, silencing both of them. "Enough," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I have made my decision. If any of you wish to challenge me, do so now. But know this, I will not abandon my path because of fear or doubt." Her words hung in the air, heavy with resolve. Though some of her advisors continued to grumble, none dared to oppose her outright. They knew better than to underestimate her determination. Despite the hostility surrounding them, Daniel and Zarina pressed on with their plans. With help from a few trusted allies, including Dr. Emily Walsh, a researcher who had always supported Zarina, they began organizing a modest wedding ceremony. The event would be held within the cons of the facility, away from the chaos outside. It wasn't ideal, but it was safe, and that mattered most. As the day approached, Zarina found herself reflecting on everything that had led her to this moment. She thought about the years she had spent feeling unworthy, rejected by her own kind for being different. She thought about the loneliness she had carried for so long, believing no one would ever truly understand her. And then she thought about Daniel, how he had seen past her appearance, how he had believed in her when no one else did. He had given her hope when she needed it most. On the morning of the wedding, Zarina stood in front of a mirror in her quarters, examining her reflection. Her rough, scaly skin seemed dull under the artificial light, and her large eyes glowed faintly, as always. She didn't look like a traditional bride, but that didn't matter to her. What mattered was the promise she was about to make to stand by Daniel's side, no matter what challenges lay ahead. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Walsh entered, carrying a simple white robe embroidered with delicate patterns. "It's not much," she said with a warm smile, "but I thought it might make you feel special today." Zarina accepted the garment with gratitude, her throat tightening with emotion. "Thank you," she said softly. "This means more to me than you know." The ceremony was small but heartfelt, attended by only a handful of close friends and allies. Daniel waited at the front of the room, dressed in a plain suit, his hands clasped nervously in front of him. When Zarina entered, escorted by Dr. Walsh, his breath caught in his chest. She looked radiant, not because of the robe, but because of the quiet confidence she carried with her dot. As they exchanged vows, their voices steady and sincere, the room fell silent. Zarina spoke of resilience, of finding beauty in differences, and of choosing love over fear. Daniel echoed her sentiments, promising to stand by her side through every challenge they would face together. Their words resonated deeply with those present, many of whom wiped away tears as the couple sealed their union with a gentle touch of their hands. Afterward, as guests mingled and shared quiet conversations, Daniel pulled Zarina aside. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "We can still back out if you're having second thoughts." Zarina shook her head, her glowing eyes soft with affection. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," she said. "This isn't just about us, Daniel. It's about proving that connection is possible, even in the face of hatred and fear." Daniel nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "Then we'll face it together. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it." Outside, the protest continued, but inside the facility, a sense of calm prevailed. Zarina and Daniel's marriage became a symbol of defiance, a reminder that love could transcend boundaries. Over time, their story inspired others to reconsider their prejudices. While not everyone was ready to embrace the idea of interspecies relationships, small acts of kindness began to emerge. Researchers started working more closely with the aliens, sharing knowledge and resources. Civilians who had once joined the protests now approached the facility with curiosity rather than hostility. Zarina wasted no time putting her newfound influence to use. As queen, she implemented reforms aimed at fostering mutual understanding between humans and her people. She organized cultural exchanges, inviting humans to learn about alien traditions while encouraging her own people to explore Earth's customs. Daniel played a key role in these efforts, serving as a bridge between the two communities. Together, they traveled to settlements and embassies, spreading a message of unity and cooperation. One day, during a visit to an alien refugee camp, Zarina and Daniel encountered a young orphan named Kale. The boy, barely 10 years old, had lost his family in the war that had destroyed their home planet. His wide, frightened eyes reminded Zarina of her own childhood, and without hesitation, she decided to adopt him. Daniel agreed wholeheartedly, welcoming Kale into their unconventional family. Kale's presence brought new challenges, but also immense joy. Teaching him about both human and alien cultures helped strengthen the bond between Daniel and Zarina, as well as their commitment to building a better future. Through Kale, they saw the potential for change not just in their lifetimes, but for generations to come. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, Zarina and Daniel faced it with unwavering determination. Their marriage had sparked something powerful, a movement toward acceptance and understanding. While hatred and fear still lingered, they refused to let it define their journey. Instead, they focused on the moments of hope, however small, knowing that each one brought them closer to a world where differences were celebrated, rather than fear. For Zarina, who had once been rejected by all, the love and support she had found with Daniel and Kale felt like a miracle. And for Daniel, standing beside Zarina as her partner and ally was a testament to the power of empathy and courage. Together, they proved that even in the darkest times, love could light the way forward. Months turned into years, and the world slowly began to change. Zarina and Daniel's marriage had sparked something unexpected, a quiet revolution of understanding between humans and aliens. At first, progress was slow and fraught with setbacks. There were still protests, still voices shouting hatred and fear. But for every angry crowd, there were also small acts of kindness that hinted at a brighter future. A human child offering a flower to an alien visitor. An elderly woman inviting a group of refugees into her home for tea. These moments might have seemed insignificant on their own, but together, they formed the foundation of a new kind of relationship, one built on curiosity rather than suspicion. Zarina worked tirelessly to nurture this fragile connection. As queen, she used her position to advocate for policies that promoted cooperation between the two species. She pushed for trade agreements that benefited both humans and aliens, ensuring that resources were shared fairly. She encouraged scientific collaborations, bringing together researchers from both worlds to tackle problems like climate change and energy shortages. Her efforts weren't always met with enthusiasm. Some humans accused her of favoring aliens, while some aliens believed she was giving too much away, but she persisted, driven by the belief that unity was worth the struggle. Daniel stood by her side through it all, serving as her closest advisor and confidant. His role evolved over time. He became more than just a translator or cultural liaison. He was a bridge, someone who could explain human customs to aliens and vice versa. Together, they traveled to settlements across Earth and beyond, meeting with leaders and ordinary citizens alike. Their presence often drew mixed reactions. Some welcomed them warmly, while others greeted them with cold stares, but they never let hostility deter them. They knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but they were willing to wait. One of their most significant achievements came when Zarina proposed the creation of a joint council, a governing body made up of representatives from both species. The idea was controversial at first, with many fearing that such a council would lead to conflict rather than compromise. But Zarina and Daniel argued passionately for its potential, pointing out how much stronger they could be if they worked together. After months of negotiations, the council was established, marking a historic step toward true coexistence. Kale, now a teenager, played an important role in their efforts. Having grown up surrounded by both human and alien influences, he had a unique perspective that allowed him to connect with people from both worlds. He often accompanied Zarina and Daniel on their travels, speaking openly about his experiences. As the adopted son of an interspecies couple, his honesty and optimism inspired others, especially younger generations who were less burdened by prejudice. Despite their successes, life wasn't without its challenges. Zarina continued to face criticism from within her own ranks, particularly from those who believed she had strayed too far from traditional leadership. Some even attempted to undermine her authority, spreading rumors about her decisions and questioning her loyalty to her people. But Zarina remained steadfast, drawing strength from Daniel and Kale. "They can say what they want," she told Daniel one evening as they sat together under the stars. "As long as I know I'm doing the right thing, their words don't matter." Daniel nodded, reaching over to take her hand. "You've done so much already," he said. "People may not see it now, but someday they'll realize how much you've changed things for the better." Years passed, and the impact of Zarina and Daniel's work became undeniable. Trade routes flourished, allowing goods and ideas to flow freely between Earth and other planets. Scientific breakthroughs improved lives on both sides, curing diseases and solving environmental crises that had once seemed insurmountable. Slowly but surely, fear gave way to trust, and mistrust gave way to friendship. Their family grew too. Kale blossomed into a compassionate young man, eager to follow in Zarina and Daniel's footsteps. He studied diplomacy and intercultural relations, determined to continue their mission of bridging gaps between species. Watching him thrive filled Zarina and Daniel with pride, reminding them of why they had fought so hard to create a better world. Even as they aged, Zarina and Daniel refused to slow down. They spent their days mentoring young leaders, sharing stories of their journey, and encouraging others to embrace diversity. Though their bodies grew weaker, their spirits remained strong. They often joked that they were leaving behind a legacy bigger than either of them could have imagined. One evening, as they sat together in their modest home, Zarina looked at Daniel with a soft smile. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't taken that chance?" she asked. "If we hadn't chosen to stand together?" Daniel thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I think about everything we've built, the friendships, the alliances, the hope, and I know it was worth it. Every challenge, every sacrifice. It was all worth it." Zarina nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting the warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth. "I feel the same way," she said. "We didn't just change our lives. We changed the future." As the years went on, Zarina and Daniel's story became legend. Textbooks chronicled their efforts, crediting them with laying the groundwork for peaceful coexistence between humans and aliens. Statues were erected in their honor, depicting the unlikely couple standing side by side, their hands joined in solidarity. Children learned about them in school, marveling at how two people from different worlds had come together to create something extraordinary. Though neither Zarina nor Daniel lived to see the full extent of their legacy, their influence endured. Generations later, descendants of the original settlers spoke of them with reverence, passing down tales of courage and love to their children. Even Kale, now an elder himself, continued to share their story, ensuring that it would never be forgotten. In the end, Zarina and Daniel proved that love transcends boundaries, not just physical ones, but emotional and societal ones as well. What started as an act of defiance against hatred and fear had blossomed into a movement that reshaped the galaxy. And though they were no longer there to witness it, their spirit lived on in every handshake, every shared meal, every moment of understanding between humans and aliens. For Zarina, who had once been rejected by all, finding acceptance and love had been a miracle. For Daniel, standing beside her had been the greatest adventure of his life. Together, they had shown the universe that even in the darkest times, light could prevail. And in doing so, they had given countless others the courage to believe in a better tomorrow. Years turned into decades, and the galaxy continued to evolve in ways Zarina and Daniel could scarcely have imagined. The bond they had forged between humans and aliens grew stronger with each passing generation, becoming a cornerstone of interstellar society. Trade routes expanded, connecting distant planets and fostering economic prosperity. Scientific advancements flourished, driven by collaboration between species that once viewed each other with suspicion. Even cultural traditions began to blend, creating vibrant new forms of art, music, and celebration that honored the diversity of the universe. Zarina and Daniel's marriage remained a symbol of hope, a reminder that love could bridge even the widest divides. Though they had long since retired from public life, their story was told and retold across countless worlds. It was whispered around campfires on remote colonies, taught in classrooms on bustling metropolises, and etched into the annals of history as proof that unity was possible. Their names became synonymous with courage, resilience, and the power of empathy. By now, both Zarina and Daniel were elderly, their bodies worn down by time, but their spirits still bright. They lived quietly in a small home near the edge of a forest, far from the chaos of politics and protests. Kale, now a respected leader in his own right, visited them often, bringing news of the latest developments in the council and sharing stories of how their work continued to inspire others. He marveled at how much the galaxy had changed since his childhood, when fear and mistrust had dominated relations between species. On one such visit, Kale found Zarina sitting on the porch, her glowing eyes dimmer than they used to be, but still filled with wisdom. Daniel sat beside her, his hair silver and his hands weathered, yet his smile as warm as ever. "You too should see what's happening out there," Kale said, holding up a tablet displaying images of thriving communities where humans and aliens live side by side. "It's incredible. People are building schools together, starting businesses, even forming families, and it's all because of you. Zarina chuckled softly, shaking her head. Not because of us, she corrected him. Because of everyone who chose to believe in something better. We just gave them a reason to start. Daniel nodded in agreement. If anything, we were lucky. Lucky to find each other, lucky to have people like you who believed in us, and lucky to live at a time when change was possible. Kale smiled, setting the tablet down on the wooden railing. Still, none of this would have happened without your courage. You show people that differences don't have to divide us, they can make us stronger. The three of them sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky turned shades of orange and pink, casting a golden glow over the trees. It was a peaceful moment, one that felt worlds away from the turmoil they had faced in their younger years. As the days passed, Zarina and Daniel grew frailer, their energy waning. But they remained content, knowing they had lived full lives. They spent their final years surrounded by loved ones, including Kale and his growing family. His children, grandchildren to Zarina and Daniel often visited, eager to hear tales of their adventures and lessons about kindness and perseverance. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Zarina leaned back in her chair, her breathing slow but steady. Daniel reached over, taking her hand in his. Do you remember the first time we met? He asked, his voice soft. Zarina smiled faintly, her eyes closing as memories flooded her mind. How could I forget? You were the only one who didn't look away. And you were the bravest person I'd ever met, Daniel replied. Even then, you carried yourself like a queen, not because of your title, but because of who you are. Tears welled up in Zarina's eyes, though her expression remained serene. Thank you, Daniel, she whispered, for everything. They sat like that for a long time, holding hands as the world around them grew quiet. When morning came, Zarina was gone, her body finally succumbing to age. Daniel grieved deeply, but he took comfort in knowing she had left behind a legacy that would endure for centuries. She had been loved not just by him, but by countless others whose lives she had touched. Daniel followed Zarina a year later, his heart failing after a lifetime of devotion and service. He was buried beside her beneath a towering tree, its branches stretching toward the heavens. A simple plaque marked their resting place, bearing an inscription that read, Together. They built bridges where there were walls. In the years that followed, their gravesite became a place of pilgrimage. Visitors came from across the galaxy to pay their respects, leaving flowers, notes, and tokens of gratitude. Some knelt in silence, overwhelmed by the weight of what Zarina and Daniel had achieved. Others brought their children, teaching them about the couple who had dared to dream of a better future. Kale often visited, sitting beneath the tree and reflecting on the lessons his parents had taught him. He thought about the sacrifices they had made, the risks they had taken, and the love that had guided them through it all. You did it, he murmured one day, tracing the words on the plaque with his fingers. You changed everything. Generations passed, and the galaxy continued to flourish. The joint council Zarina had envisioned became a model for cooperation, resolving conflicts and fostering understanding between species. Schools named after her and Daniel taught students not just about science and history, but about compassion and acceptance. Artistic tributes celebrated their story, from paintings to songs, holographic performances that brought their journey to life. Even as technology advanced and civilizations evolved, Zarina and Daniel's message endured. In a universe often divided by fear and misunderstanding, they served as a reminder that connection was possible, that love could transcend boundaries and create something beautiful. And so, their legacy lived on, carried forward by those who believed in their vision. From the smallest acts of kindness to the grandest achievements of diplomacy, the ripples of their impact spread endlessly, touching lives in ways they could never have predicted. Though Zarina and Daniel were gone, their spirit remained alive. In every handshake, every shared laugh, and every moment of unity between species. In the end, They had proven that even in the face of hatred and rejection, love could prevail. They had shown the galaxy that no matter how different people might seem, they were all connected by a shared desire for peace and belonging. And in doing so, they had given countless generations the courage to keep dreaming of a brighter tomorrow.